Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for watching. Tonight, the leader of the NDP is in Windsor supporting workers on strike. Plus, a cross-border investigation into gun trafficking has led to hundreds of criminal charges. We'll tell you more about Project Moneypenny. Following a string of police deaths on the line of duty across the country, we'll hear from a local sergeant who will be attending an upcoming funeral for yet another fallen officer. And a big moment for a local hockey player. Matt Onushka gets the tryout of a lifetime. We begin tonight with the visit from federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh to our city today. He claimed victory for the new dental plan in the federal budget and promised support to striking workers. The CBC's Dale Molnar reports.
I always think about, as a kid, I went to Fast Eddie's a lot.
Jagmeet Singh began the day pledging to help to get increases to federal flood mitigation funding to Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens. The city wants more money from the feds because it says what was previously agreed to isn't enough, thanks to inflation. Then at St. Clair College, a tour of the dental health program as a backdrop to promote the federal dental health plan in the budget. That's something that Singh campaigned on and delivered as part of a deal to prop up the federal Liberal government into 2025.
I want people to know that New Democrats take you seriously. We're not just there to make noise in the corner, but we're there to deliver results.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is also pushing for support in Windsor, Essex, drawing large crowds. Political science professor Lydia Miljan says Singh has to balance his support for the Liberal government with the need to also distinguish his party as the party of choice.
And the only way he can become prime minister is if he wins seats. And so he's really got to demonstrate that he can pull in as large as or bigger crowds than Poilievre. And that's quite a feat.
Miljan also expected Singh to stress how it was his party that pushed for the dental plan. He didn't disappoint.
We're trying to make that government work for you. And if we were not there, there would not be dental care. There would not be GST doubling of the rebate. People would not be getting more money in their pocket.
Liberal MP Eric Kuzmerchik was also out promoting the dental plan and answered with this.
Canadians want members of parliaments from all parties to work together and get things done.
Yeah. I wish he was under better circumstances, but we're here for you.
Singh also spent time pledging support to striking Windsor salt workers, promising to expand anti-replacement worker legislation.
Absolutely. We're going to send a clear message that employers cannot do that. They can't bring in scab workers. They can't bring in replacement workers. They've got to negotiate fairly at the table.
The salt mine is now owned by an American holding company.
The main problem here is contracting out all of our jobs. They bring in scab, lower paid workers while they lay us off and we sit at home.
The NDP are pushing for amendments to the Investment Canada Act, which would require an automatic review of any sale to U.S. entities of natural resource-based companies in Canada.
His message of solidarity that's going to come here, he's going to push some issues, make some phone calls, make sure that people's aware.
Talks have resumed between the Unifor union representing the workers and the company. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
New details today about a massive auto investment in Ontario. Ford is going to retool its assembly complex in Oakville for electric vehicles. We first reported this back in 2020. That's when Ford announced it would spend $1.8 billion on that plant. Today, the company said that work will start in the middle of next year. The company says it will build an EV complex that will include a plant where battery packs are made. It's expected that the first vehicles will drive off the line in 2025. No word on what exactly that vehicle might be. And in a bit of a surprise move, Windsor Spitfire Matt Onushka will dress for the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight. The Leafs have signed the goalie to an amateur tryout contract. That means Onushka will be on the bench and available for action when they take on the Lightning in Tampa Bay tonight. The Leafs have already clinched a spot in the playoffs, so these games don't matter in the standings, but it could be a big moment for Onushka if his number gets called. Bittersweet for Spitfires fans, though many would rather see him playing in Windsor right now, but the Spits were eliminated from the playoffs last week, and tonight's game starts at 7. And during that game, you'll likely see someone asking you to place a bet. It's a big part of sport. 2 Raptors players are speaking out about sports betting ahead of the NBA postseason. Financial losses are not only burning a hole in people's pockets, but also burning out some players' patience. Meg Roberts has the story.
April, a win for Toronto sports fans with the Leafs, Raptors, and Blue Jays all playing at the same time. But with more sports comes more sports betting, which some athletes say they could do without. Toronto Raptor Chris Boucher making this comment on Yahoo Sports Canada.
Man, I'm so over this, man. People are literally, I got called. Somebody said I chose the wrong slave today. Literally, send me that message. I had to read it. I couldn't believe it.
What?
Yeah, he said I chose the wrong slave because I had only 5 points and he needed me to score 10.
Bruce Kidd is a former Olympian and professor of sport and public policy. What do you make of a story like that?
Well, it's very upsetting that athletes are under this pressure and they're getting these attacks for not meeting the point spread or the parlay that a bettor has placed. I'm at a loss for words about how upsetting that is.
Kidd says sports betting is becoming dangerous for the authenticity found in sport.
It poisons sport, it distorts sport.
Kidd says gambling is amplified by accessibility. A quick Google search and dozens of betting apps come up. The harassment of players, he says, heightened by social media. Both those things you can now do from the comfort of your couch. Toronto Raptor Fred Van Fleet says his own experiences have driven him away from online engagement.
The same people that is talking about us, like, you can't fathom dealing with this on a daily basis. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't fathom I hope your mom dies DM every day.
The Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario says it's appalled by such acts. It said incidents of this nature fall outside the AGCO's realm of regulatory authority and that it enforces strict standards when it comes to advertising and imposes outright prohibitions to advertising to children. Kidd says the Canadian government needs to come up with tougher laws.
Surely we can eliminate the messages upon children and youth that sport is mostly about betting. That's crazy.
Kidd says he's planning on putting together a campaign to ban advertising of all forms of gambling. Meg Roberts, CBC News, Toronto.
Dozens of people have been arrested and hundreds of criminal charges laid in connection with a year-long investigation into cross-border gun trafficking. It's being called Project Moneypenny. And as Ali Chiasson reports, while the arrests are good news, some say it isn't enough to deter future gun trafficking crimes.
There's a large amount of Glock handguns, primarily all semi-automatic. They're all absolutely lethal.
This is the result of Project Moneypenny. And yes, the 007 reference is intentional, inspired by the first of 42 alleged gun smugglers who have been arrested.
And James Bond analogy to the initial of that first name, and we'll leave it at that.
In total, 442 criminal charges have been laid, along with the seizure of 173 guns in Canada and the United States. It's a joint investigation by several local police services, including Toronto and York Region, as well as the Canada Border Service Agency.
We are all battling the same challenges, the illegal guns coming from the United States. The only way to combat this problem is by working together.
The guns are legally purchased in the United States, mostly from Arizona and Florida, then smuggled into Canada for a pretty penny.
It's supply and demand. These firearms are sold for 300%, 400%, 500% markup. So there's a demand for them, and they're sold to different individuals, different organized crime groups.
It is really a drop in the bucket.
The former chief of London Police says legislation isn't enough to stop the flow of guns across the world's largest undefended land border.
Doing nothing is not an option. And so the police have to keep doing these projects, have to keep working with our partners to the south.
It can seem like an endless game of whack-a-mole.
Do you want to chop off the toes of a criminal organization, or do you want to chop off the head?
Former Baltimore police commander and ATF member Robert Sneed says both countries share a common goal.
You have a criminal organization who's operating in between Canada, the Ontario area, and the United States. Both sides of the border have law enforcement professionals. And what's good in your country as far as, from a crime prevention standpoint, is pretty much good. We have the same common interests, morals, and goals. We want to prevent crime before it happens.
In the meantime, here at home, investigators say just having 173 guns off the street is enough to call Project Moneypenny a success. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Over the last several months, we've told you about a number of police officers who have died on the front lines across Canada. At least 9 have been killed since last September. Some of those losses include the deaths of 2 South Simcoe officers who were fatally shot in Innisfil in October, another 2 officers who were shot and killed last month in Edmonton, and most recently, a provincial police officer in Quebec was stabbed during an attempted arrest. These deaths can take a toll on communities and on police officers across the country. Sergeant Dallaire Ball is with Windsor's Honour Guard. One of the unit's responsibilities is attending police funerals throughout Canada and the U.S. to represent the local service. I sat down with him to get a sense of the impact these deaths can have on fellow officers.
We've attended funerals for the last 9 officer line of duty deaths in Canada. So the 2 South Simcoe police officers, the funeral was held in Barrie. I had the pleasure of joining the Honour Guard to attend that funeral as well. It's obviously a very somber moment. It's an opportunity to reflect. It's an opportunity to pay our respects to police officers who've paid the ultimate sacrifice. And so that's something that we take very, it's close to our heart.
Is there a moment that stands out in memory that you'd be willing to talk about?
There's no one particular moment that really stands out. They kind of all blend in together. I can tell you that the emotions, the feeling of camaraderie as well when you do attend these police funerals is something very special. And it's an opportunity, again, for us to be present there. And it's an opportunity to understand that the policing family at large gets impacted. So whether there's a police officer line of duty death in Edmonton, it impacts on some level or another an officer on the other side of the country in some way. So it's an opportunity for us to attend that and show our respects to that officer and their family and their police service.
So given that impact that you just mentioned, how do these unfortunate events affect you personally?
So there are inherent risks in policing because policing, you're dealing with sometimes the unknown, whether it's a 911 misdial, and officers have to attend there and try to discover what happened. And sometimes it's not what you expect to run into. And so there are some inherent risks associated with policing, but I can tell you that the rewards of this policing profession far and away outweigh the risks that are associated to it.
Sergeant Ball will be attending the funeral for Sergeant Maureen Bro this Thursday. She's the officer who was killed in Quebec last month, stabbed during an attempted arrest. Bro had 2 children, more than 20 years on the job, and she was just days away from starting a new job as an investigator. Let's take a live look outside there. It's looking a little gray, but we did have lots of sun, and more sun is coming tomorrow. Colette will be here after the break to tell us more. Stay with us. Avian flu has had a serious impact on bird populations, and while the disease doesn't pose a big threat to humans, vaccine researchers are working on finding something to fight it in case possible mutations widen the danger. Sam Sampson has more on that.
You won't find leftovers here. Instead, tools for research, dealing with a creeping influenza concern.
We have seen this contemporary H5N1 virus been circulating in the world, and now it seems this virus has gained ground in North America.
H5N1 has killed or infected more than 7 million birds in Canada since 2021. Recently, mammals have died from it, including someone's dog in southern Ontario. It died after chewing on a dead goose earlier this month. The threat to people continues to be low.
But I see the urgency of developing vaccine.
That's what's going on here, developing vaccines for birds and humans. Yan Zhou's team looks for pieces of the virus that this team can test on. The Saskatoon scientists are developing a series of vaccines against different strains of bird flu in case of virus mutation.
We're not only trying to prevent the next human pandemic, but also pandemic in our agricultural species.
At this point, Alison Kelvin says Canada's poultry industry is most at risk, which translates into economic worries. When one bird on a farm gets H5N1, the entire population may have to be culled.
So the devastation it's twofold. It's one, the amount of the death and destruction that you're confronted with in the barns, and then there's the reality of you got to clean this mess up.
Jelmer Wiersma says a vaccine preventing that experience would be great, but the challenge is finding the right combo.
If it was in a method that didn't get the birds sick, we were still allowed to export, it has to tick all the right boxes.
The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says it's developing vaccine policies with the poultry industry right now. Health Canada says it has contracts with manufacturers to quickly secure lots of human vaccines, should that be necessary. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Colette Kennedy joins us now for a look at local weather. And Colette, local weather is just so beautiful right now the last few days, and it looks like it's here to stick around for a little bit.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where if you sort of ordered up what you would like, I mean, it's hard to beat some of these conditions, right? So comfortable. I know a little breezy at times, also a bit of extra cloud cover in there as well, but really comfortable conditions with the fact that we have the mild temperatures. We were up to 24 degrees today, but then also not dealing with humidity, which we know becomes a really big thing in not too many more weeks, right? So the breeze with the lakes also help keep it comfortable. If you look not just at the numbers beyond those temperatures and just check out the picture here in terms of what's going on with the coloration. So these contours, right, where you're seeing the greens in here and a little bit around the lakeshore, Goderich. So all of those areas, the temperature is just a little bit cooler with that lake influence. Temperature still right around 4 or 5 degrees. So it's going to take some time for that to warm up. So it's going to keep the lakeshore cooler. The sustained winds, having a look at those with that westerly flow, And then a little bit gustier as we get into the gusts over 40 kilometers an hour. But as we head towards these later evening hours, towards midnight, we're going to find the winds actually die back, a little bit calmer through the overnight, and then they're going to start to pick up again later in the day tomorrow as we actually have a frontal boundary, kind of a warm front pushing in that really is going to pull that direction from the southwest, looking at some of those gusts being over 60 kilometers an hour. But what else does that do? Well, that's also pulling us into even warmer temperatures. So the next couple of days, tomorrow not likely that we'll be seeing a record, but we're going to be getting close. We might be kind of flirting with it within a degree or two. Satellite imagery showing you some of that extra cloud, still pretty bright skies, and still, quite frankly, the point where we can get into having high UV index and sunburn. And you're certainly going to find that tomorrow, because we're going to see that clearing overnight tonight, and then we get into the full sunshine through the day for tomorrow. So be aware. Also, because the breeze kind of can trick you into thinking, oh, well, it's not that warm. But definitely it is there, and that sun is going to be beating down. Some high thin cloud coming in later and as we go into Thursday, but we've got a couple of days here where, more than a couple, all right, where that ridge of high pressure, kind of a summer-like pattern, frankly, when it sets up and has an impact for this many days in a row, moving on through. Overnight tonight, looking at those clearing conditions, still a few clouds hanging around for Sarnia towards London as well. 9 to 10 degrees for the overnight temperatures. Okay, those are below a normal daytime high, but they're closer to that than what we're seeing with our daytime highs, way above seasonal, more than 10 degrees, in some cases 10 to 15 degrees. So for tomorrow, I've got us at 26, building towards 27 into Thursday. We may go even warmer than this, trying to be a little bit conservative. And then Friday, 24, we start to come back down into the weekend. And really at this point, that looks like the next chance, significant chance, that we get away from this ridge and have that risk of some wet weather coming in for the second half of the weekend. Katerina.
It had to come back, that wet weather.
Yeah,
it just couldn't stay away.
Count the number of days. Come on, we're doing pretty good.
This is true. We're going to count our blessings. Thanks for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
When we come back, we're going to tell you about the successes of a program in Ecuador and how it's doing its part to protect an endangered species. Stay with us. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spent the day in Toronto in talks with Ukraine's Prime Minister. Trudeau announced details of a new weapons shipment for Ukraine's military.
We'll be sending 21,000 assault rifles, 38 machine guns, and over 2.4 million rounds of ammunition.
A range of military, economic, and cultural measures were revealed to help Ukraine in its war against Russia and as it braces for the possibility of heavy fighting this spring. Ottawa also announced new sanctions on Russia and some organizations with ties to Belarus. The Ukrainian Prime Minister thanked Canada for its support of his country since the Russian invasion in February 2022. The CEO and members of the board of directors for the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation are stepping down. The resignations come after the charity became embroiled in controversy over alleged foreign interference linked to the Chinese government. CBC's Catherine Cullen has the latest.
The Trudeau Foundation is a foundation with which I have absolutely no intersection.
The Prime Minister has long tried to distance himself from the foundation named after his father. But lately, politics still looms large over the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation.
We weren't partisan. We weren't promoting a particular vision.
The foundation insists on its independence. The nonprofit gives money to support academics, but one donation has it entangled in concerns around foreign interference. It came from this man, Zhang Bin, an advisor to the Chinese government. The Globe and Mail reported the $200,000 pledge was an effort by officials in Beijing to sway Trudeau, though Trudeau's work with the foundation ended before he became prime minister. Still, it's messy because the man who was the Trudeau Foundation's CEO back then was appointed by the government recently to write a report about interference in the 2021 election, including the actions of the Chinese government, prompting political reaction like this.
He hired the former CEO of the same Trudeau Foundation that had received the money from China to write a report about it.
And the former Governor General that Trudeau appointed to advise him on foreign interference is also a member of the foundation. Today, the CEO and board resigned en masse, saying, "The circumstances created by the politicization of the foundation have made it impossible to continue with the status quo." Pierre Poilievre tweeted out a call for an investigation into the foundation, but the Prime Minister is pointing the finger at Poilievre.
I have no doubt that the Trudeau Foundation, like foundations and charities that conservative politicians have attacked in the past, will continue to do the excellent work that it will do.
The Prime Minister didn't directly answer whether all this politicization would stop him from making future appointments with ties to the foundation. Catherine Cullen, CBC News, Ottawa.
Something neat before we let you go. More than 80 giant tortoises have been released into the wild in the Galapagos Islands. It's part of an endangered species breeding program in Ecuador. The Hood Island hatchlings were born and raised at a conservation park. And the little ones were fitted with a microchip to monitor their travels and took a helicopter ride to their new natural habitat in the islands. An additional 250 more babies will be released when they're a little bit older. The breeding operation has proven enormously successful. It started with only 15 tortoises 50 years ago and has produced 3,000. That is it for CBC Windsor News. For more, go to cbc.ca/Windsor, and you can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And check out The National tonight at 9 Eastern on CBC News Network, and it's also streaming on CBC Gem and CBC News Explore. Have a good night.